Well, I've just heard the news, and like everybody else, although it was somewhat expected at some point, it's always a shock, the passing of the Queen. And I've never experienced the death of a monarch before in my lifetime. The Queen has always been there. And it reminded me of a story when I remember very fondly, and I'm very proud that I had met the Queen and shaken hands with her, although I was dressed up as an overgrown schoolboy. And I thought I would share that with anybody who's interested. I'm Richard Vobes, I'm an entertainer, and I used to do juggling and unicycling and mime, robotics and all sorts of circus skills and bits and bobs, but also comedy characters. And I had a comedy character as an overgrown schoolboy with a blazer and a cap and the old sort of fashion Billy Bunter type public schoolboy type thing, and a little black case which I used to do a bit of mime in and various things. And I would entertain crowds all over the place really as part of many gala days, corporate fun days, that sort of thing, festivals, fetes, you name it. As a jobbing entertainer, you were employed to do all sorts of things. So I'd ride the unicycle and just amuse the crowds. And one day I had an inquiry to entertain a crowd of children when not a supermarket, a shopping centre, a shopping mall was being opened. It had been regenerated and being opened. Now I forget whether it was in Dorking in Surrey or Leatherhead, but it was in one of those two towns around about early 1990s, something like that. And I can't really remember whether I knew the Queen was coming to open it until I got there. But it's only about an hour away from my house, and I thought, I don't need to get any petrol. I know sometimes at these events, places can be difficult to find somewhere to change. And so I just thought I'll drive up in my costume, which, as I say, was this overgrown school kid with glasses and hat, tie, blazer, shorts, big yellow socks and sort of bother boy boots. And my characterization was, all right, hello everybody, I'm an overgrown schoolboy type thing. It worked really well with kids because they could see an adult dressed as a school kid, and it used to, cause a lot of fun. And when I got there, there were all these people from the Secret Service. I didn't know that they were there looking down the drains and looking into cracks in the wall. There was a couple of them on the roof, one of them with a gun on the top of this supermarket. And I was very quickly told that the Queen was coming and her entourage to open the shopping mall. And I thought, oh, this is lovely. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, basically, just before the Queen comes, for about an hour or so, we're going to bus in, because this was during the weekday, real children, real school children, and we just need to keep them entertained. And then when the Queen comes, she'll come down the middle of this aisle, which is barricaded off. The kids will be behind that, and they'll be waving flags. And you're really there just to encourage them to, when the Queen comes, wave the flags, give her a cheer and all that kind of stuff. Because obviously a lot of these kids had never seen the Queen. They'd only ever seen pictures at school and that sort of thing. And I'd never met the Queen. I had actually met the Prince, I nearly said Prince Albert then, which would have dated me very much. Prince Philip. I had actually met him on another job, funnily enough, dressed as an overgrown schoolboy, where I was entertaining somebody at a sewage farm. But I don't think Prince Philip would want to be reminded of that. But of course, he's since passed as well. And in the entertainment business, you do get used to meeting regal people or important people in the government. You meet all sorts of people, and you often don't know until there you are with them, depending on the sort of jobs that you get. Anyway, so that was fine. And of course, the idea was that once the Queen came, that was it. You could go home and then the rest of the event would be done. In the meantime, you just got to keep these children entertained, because kids can be a bit unruly. They can get excited. They get excited to begin with, and then they get bored very quickly. So I was out in the middle section. The kids were behind the barriers. They would all come in. I'd be going, hello, what are you up to? Oh, do you know why you're here? Do you know who's coming? Yes, the Queen. Oh, I love the Queen. I do like the Queen. And so we'd get them. And I said, when the Queen comes, you've got to wave your flag. And then I would do some silly things, a bit of slapstick comedy, ride on the unicycle. And as I say, I had this little black case, which was nothing in it. And I would do this illusion that the case gets stuck in space, and I would walk round it, make it have seemingly full of helium, and it would go up in the air, or I'd be dragged along with it. It was the old-fashioned suitcase routine, which I used to do very frequently and had a lot of fun with. And the kids loved all that. Well, I just get carried away when I'm in my character. And before I knew it, suddenly there was the entourage coming down this aisle. The kids were behind the barriers. I was going, oh, stay there. And as they came down, I realised I had nowhere to go. I was working with another chap who'd got himself the other side of the barrier, where I guess we should have been. But I was in the middle of this sort of roadway through the shopping mall, and there was nowhere for me to go. Dignitaries from the shopping mall and the council and various places had already come out and formed a line. And because I was in the middle going, come on, wave your flags and a big smile for Her Majesty, Her Majesty. And suddenly there they were. And I thought, I've got nowhere to go. So I just joined the line of all the dignitaries. Well, of course, Her Majesty came down, and the bodyguards and Prince Philip and a whole load of other important people came along, and she was coming along the line and was introduced to each one in turn. Oh, this is so-and-so, and she would shake hands. Hello there, that's very nice. And have a little bit of conversation, and she would move. And there was about 8 or 9 of these people, and then there was me on the end. And I shouldn't really have been there at all. But I was. There was nowhere to go. So she came along the line, she said hello to everyone, and then she stopped at me, because she couldn't just suddenly ignore me. She didn't know whether I was a dignitary or a famous person or, you know, whoever. A man dressed as a schoolboy in his shorts and yellow big socks and bumper trail boots and his blazer and his hat at a cockeyed thing, and with a little black suitcase. And I was still in character because the kids were watching me. I didn't drop the characterization at all, because, you know, as a performer, you tend not to. When you've got the costume on, you're in character. It's very difficult sometimes. So I was carried away. So anyways, the Queen came over to me and she looked at me, and she said, "And why are you dressed in those striking clothes?" Because she didn't quite sort of work it out. And I said, "Oh, hello, Your Majesty." And we shook hands, which was magic. I said, I'm here to make sure all the children are going to wave their flags at you, Your Majesty, because we love you. And she sort of gave me a wry smile, and then she moved on because she was being ushered away. And I think the bodyguards and the other people were slightly concerned because they were talking to somebody who shouldn't have been in the line. So it was absolutely hilarious. And we shook hands. Of course, the Queen wore her glove, white gloves, as she shakes hands with everybody. And it was absolutely magical. The only thing after the event that made me think, blimey, it was so lucky that I was who I was and not somebody else, is because there were all these Secret Service, and there was a bloke up there with his gun and various other people in black making sure nothing went on. I was aware as I walked away from the event, at no time had anyone ever decided to come up to me and say, "Excuse me, mate, what's in the black bag in my little black suitcase?" Nobody. And I thought, if I wasn't who I was, an entertainer, I could have been anybody dressed up there with something a bit nefarious on board. But luckily, I wasn't. And it was an absolute thrill and a joy. And it's something that's etched on my mind, meeting the Queen and shaking hands, especially as I wasn't supposed to be there. And I just thought I'd share that story with you. I hope you enjoyed it. And being an entertainer, you know, it's a great life. And of course, in my YouTube channel, I'm on a quest for England and Englishness. And what could be more English than shaking hands with Her Majesty the Queen? She will, of course, be sorely missed.